You good now? All right. It was a little technical issue. It's all right. It's all right. Start all over? All right, let's kick it off. Welcome to the Liberty and Life Nation collaboration Tuesday night teaching. If it is your first time joining us, please make sure that you text NEW to 443-347-6658. Also, if you'd like to plan a visit to join us in person, you will have a great time with us. Text PLAN to the same number, 443-347-6658. Also, please don't forget to visit our websites. Make sure to join our Facebook groups. And also, do not miss to subscribe to our YouTube channel. All right? Now, we love to know that you're here, so please make sure that you type good evening in the comments. That will let me know that you're here, and later on we can address any questions that you have. Lastly, but not least, make sure that you like and share this video. Now, a few announcements before we get started. Make sure that you join us for the month of March for our sermon series, The Great Exchange. Now, you can join us in person or online. Make sure it's Sunday at 10:30 a.m. Also, make sure that you don't miss us on Tuesday night teachings, not only today, but also the following Tuesdays at 7 o'clock for our teachings. Also, tomorrow, you do not want to miss this meditation moment with Pastor Angel. It will start promptly at 7 p.m. You will be in for a treat for a 30-minute session, which is going to help you to unwind and relax. So please don't miss it. Amen. Now, as you know, there's plenty ways to give. All right, you can go online through our websites. You can also go via Cash App or Givelify. And also, you can also send it via mail if you want to go ahead and pay for that stamp. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so this series that we're going to start is all about how to eliminate your debt, right? So that's therefore the name, In Over My Head. How to get rid of debt and reach financial freedom. So now, I always like to make sure that I start with Scripture, because I want to make sure all of our teachings are based on Scripture. Amen. So we're going to go to Hebrews 12:11, and it reads, "No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it." And I'm going to let that sink in just for a few seconds. So now, let's go ahead and get this show on the road. All right? First, I want to make sure that when you hear the term financial peace, what do you think about? Like, what crosses your mind when you think about financial peace? Anybody that's here in attendance, talk to me. What do you hear? What do you think about for you to reach financial peace? No stress. What else? Relief. What else? Sleep. That's right. Them sleepless nights, right? Your time. See, the way that Dave Ramsey actually defines it is financial peace is not the acquisition of stuff. It's actually learning to live on less than you make. So one, you can give money back and have money to invest so it can work for you. Right? All right. So why am I standing here? So let me tell you a little bit about my story. A few years ago, over 10 years ago, without telling you how long ago, I had no debt. In a 6-month period, I actually acquired over 100 grand in debt. Not like the candy bar. It was not sweet at all. It was very heavy on me, my marriage, and my children. We have 3 kids that were still in elementary school when we were going through this. right? We had a combined income. Now, mind you, two-income household, $75,000. So I have more debt than I earned in a year. Now, keep in mind the 75 grand was actually before taxes was taken out, right? The 100 grand was after taxes, right? But I will tell you this. It took me all about around 3 years to pay it all off. So now, the question that everybody asks me right after I share that with them is, how in the world did you do that? Because I always tell people that's actually where I feel like I gain my credibility, right? I think that God put me through that so I can come back and teach it to somebody else, right? So if I tell you a little bit about me is I love teaching people how to grow financially, right? My job is not to sit here and teach you how to be a millionaire. My job is how to teach you how to reach financial freedom, right? So you're not stressing anymore, right? So your money can start working for you versus you working for it, right? So what was the answer? How did I do it? I put a plan together. I'm a planner by nature, right? Now, mind you, back then, I had no training whatsoever. Nobody had sat me down and said, hey, Yvonne, this is how you got to do it, right? But I did know what it was doing to my family, so I knew I had to make a change, right? So I put a plan together. And that came along with a lot of hard work, commitment, but most importantly, the discipline. Because without the discipline, I don't believe that we would have been able to get out of it, right? But here's the trick to it. Even though I'm the one that put the plan together, I needed to make sure that my husband was on board, right? And then like I told you, I had 3 small kids. If you're anything like me as a parent, we all have this one dream and illusion when we have our children, right? It's to give them what we did not have while we was growing up, right? So up to that point, my children, that's all they knew. I want this, you can have it. I want to go here, you can go. Whatever commitment I had to make, all I did was make sure that they had it, right? But then when I reached this point where I can barely pay a deductible to take my child to the doctor, can I really afford to buy you that Wii? I can't. So how do I look at my children in the eye and say, baby, I can't? After all your life, all I said was yes. Right? So it becomes a family affair. So understand that you can't carry this by yourself. If you're married, you got to make sure that your spouse is going along the journey with you. Now, if they start out not wanting to join you on the ride, still get on the train. Because they will join you eventually. All right? Your kids are not going to stop loving you because you started saying no, right? So what I started doing was instead of having pizza night every other day, it became like once every 2 weeks, right? So then we had to start becoming creative, right? Because, you know, little kids, if y'all have little kids, raise your hand. Y'all know exactly what I'm talking about. The energy drains you out. So I bought a boxer and let the dog play with him. All right, so let's get back in here. So, all right, so how do we do it? So now the first thing I want to make sure that you understand now is this, right? Because this is going to be the foundation for it all, right? What is your money personality type? Yeah, I understand who you are first, right? So you understand how to make the adjustments as we put this together, right? So you got the big spender, right? So who's that big spender? That's the one that loves the nice cars, the new gadgets, got to have brand name on all the time. This type of person typically is not afraid to be in debt. Then you have your saver, right? Your saver only shops when it's necessary, right? Typically, these are the people that you say they're frugal. They're not cheap. They're frugal. And they rarely make a purchase with credit. Then you have your shopper. Shopper are the fun people because they're the ones that are emotionally attached to spending money. Because it gives you some sense of gratification on the inside. It makes you tingle that you got to do it again. And as a matter of fact, it gets to the point where you like to find like bargains and deals, right? And you're like, oh my God, it was $200. Now it's $65. Girl, we got to go buy it. But I don't need it, but I'm going to buy it. Why? Because it was on sale. Right? And then you have your debtor, right? That's the one who's not trying to make a statement. They're not trying to impress nobody. But here's the thing, though. They just don't spend any time thinking about money whatsoever. Now, check this out, though. Out of all the personalities, this is the one that's typically in the highest amount of debt. Followed by that big spender. Right? And the last personality type is your investor. That's the one who's consciously aware of where every dime goes. Because their goal is to make their money work for them. Because to them, that's what it's all about. So now, the truth is, you're either going to be in one bucket, you're going to be in multiple buckets, or if you really sit back and think about where you've been, you probably have moved from one bucket to another. Because sometimes life has a funny way of teaching us something, right? We start learning the value of certain things, right? The money I used to spend in my 20s is not the money I'm spending in my 40s, right? So it's okay for you to go through that transition. So why do I make a point of that? Because regardless of where you are today does not mean that you cannot change where you're going to be tomorrow so you can make a difference for what's yet to come. Make sense? All right, so let's start talking about how do we start making this thing work, right? So now that you understand where you are, if you can help me move it to the next one, we're going to talk about step one. Everybody loves this step. Okay, I lied. Step one is building an emergency fund. So the first thing I want you to do is think about the last time you had an emergency occur. What happened? You ain't got no money. What happened? Pulled out a credit card. What else happened? What else happened? You had an emergency just happen. Boom, flat tire. You borrow money. You were stressed out. Because you're trying to figure out how to make it work. Because God knows if your credit card is maxed out and you already done borrow money from everybody in your family and all your friends, you start running out of places to go, right? And heaven forbid you hang around broke people. We really in trouble, right? That's why we go to the used tire shop. That's right. That's where we go. $40. Right? So now, what I want you to think about is this. If you think about your last experience where that did happen, where you were stressed out, how do you think you would have felt if you knew that you had a backup spot that you could count on to fulfill that emergency? Then you no longer have to go out nowhere to find the money because you got the money. Right? So, first things first is the first step that you have to accomplish is you have to put together $1,000. Great. Yay. What do I do with it? Where do I put it? In my checking account, Yvonne. Wrong answer. In my savings account. Wrong answer. No. You've got to put it in an account that you have zero access to. Oh yeah, Minister D. There's people who got them accounts that you don't have an ATM machine for. No cards. No ATM, no cards. You're going to have to go to the bank to go get the money out. Not an online. You got to put that money somewhere where you cannot easily access it. Right? Because now let's talk about what defines an emergency. So remember I started out by saying what's your personality type, right? That big 80-inch TV being on sale is not an emergency. Girl, you just don't understand. It is $500 right now. They'll never do that again. That is not an emergency. You wanting to buy an outfit because you're going out with the girls or the boys is not an emergency. And now here's where I'm going to pluck a nerve real quick. You ready? Your child's field trip is not an emergency either. See, now we go back to making sure that we get the things done that we need to get done so you can actually get out of debt. Right? So we have to make sure that we truly identify what is an emergency. So if I ask you, what do you truly believe would be an emergency, what would that be? I'll let you guys tell me. A pipe busted in my house. My car broke down. What else? It could be a medical emergency. You could have lost your income, right? So I got to pay the rent. Now check this out though. Because you mishandle your budget for the month or your money for the month does not mean that I'm now going to take out $1,000 out that I have my emergency fund so I can pay my rent because that was there to begin with. So that means that from the beginning, you was not planning to save that money. You just had it there as backup so you could feel good. The emergency fund is not for you to feel good to say I got $1,000 saved up. It's so you can become your own bank. If we put this thing together and we follow all the steps, I promise you, by the time you're done with it, you will be your own bank. I like the sound of that. Escobar Savings. Right? So can you personalize that? Minister D Savings and Bank. Or Bank and Savings. Right? So think about it. What will that mean to you? So step one is you got to put $1,000 together. So I'm glad you asked that question. So how do I do that? I'm already on a tight budget as it is. Where am I going to find $1,000 to save? I'm glad y'all asked that. God, y'all on point. So here is where the work starts. One thing that COVID taught every single one of us is to be creative on finding ways to make money. Right? So I don't care. You might have some stuff around the house, some old clothes that might not fit anymore. You might not want to use anymore. Sell it. Right? If you have any particular skill set, sell it for money. Right? So you can get the $1,000. Get a part-time job if that's what you got to do. Until you have your $1,000 put in the bank. That you will not have access to. Because once you put the first $1,000 in, now you know an emergency can happen and you're covered. And it's not going to skew the rest of the money that you have inside your house that you're going to use to get out of debt. Does that make sense? So it is essential that we all understand what we got to do. Now, some of you might already have $1,000 that you can put to the side and might not miss it and still be able to pay all your bills. If that is you, put $1,000 in an account that you have no access to. Yes, ma'am.
You're helping. But, okay, so you talked about your financial personality type, right?
Hmm?
So there's no category on here for me. I may fit in some of those categories that was mentioned, but also, what happens when, for me, I can save it, I can put money up, and I like to see money in my account. I get depressed when I don't see money in my account.
Yes, ma'am.
So say the money is there. So now I don't want to spend it because the numbers are moving.
Yes, ma'am.
So this emergency fund of this $1,000, I'm just trying to get past that. My mental, it's probably just me. My mental to see that $1,000, it needs to stay there. Emergency may come. And I'm like, it's there, but I don't want to move it because now if I take money out of there, that means I got to replenish. I got to put money back in there again. And we ain't going to get that far.
But that is what you got to do. You're going to put that out and you're going to replenish it back in because that is the key behind all of this. It's all about breaking the mindset. Because, see, now I'm going to paint this picture. Do you have any debt?
Oh, yeah.
So you really don't have money in the bank?
Nope.
Because you owe it to somebody else, right? So again, when I share my story, I told you $100,000 in debt, right? So I already was spending $1,200 a month before I even got paid. But I had $3,000 in the bank. It never moved, right? But did I really have it? No, because like I told you, I got to a point where I couldn't even take my kid to a doctor. Couldn't pay the deductible, which was a $20 deductible at that point, right? So did I really have money? I didn't, right? So that's why this emergency fund is so critical. You have to establish it because you have to have somewhere to go to in case something happens. Now, what do you think happens if an emergency happens? Let's say that you get a flat tire, you got to replace your tire, you spend $200 on it, right? So now your emergency fund no longer has $1,000, now it has $800. What you got to do? You got to put it back, right? Because if you had put it on a credit card, what was you going to do? You was going to pay it off, right? But check this out. Don't you pay interest to the credit card? So why wouldn't you pay interest to yourself? Right? So instead of putting back $200, put back $225. Isn't that what you were going to pay the bank had you put it on a credit card? Make sense? That's your first $1,000 right there. So again, if you have it, move it. If you don't have it, get a job, get creative. But whatever you do, do not borrow money. Because yet that will be another debtor that you have to pay to. So you solve nothing. Right? All right. So let's go ahead and go to the next thing. Here is where people have a lot of fun. A lot of shopping. So remember I told you I had a plan, right? I put a plan together and I said, wait a minute. How am I going to get out of this? Because this is really going to tear my family apart. Right? So the first thing I had to find out was, where's my money going? I mean, I knew I had debt, so I knew I was paying the debtors, right? I was paying the credit cards or whatever, because I was protecting my good old FICO, my little credit score, making sure it didn't get damaged. Because, I don't know about you, but I was taught that if you had credit, you always had money. Right? Because that's what society wants us to think. Because do you realize that for you to reach 850 credit score, that means you must have been in debt over $500,000 throughout your lifetime to get there? Wow. And if you start adding up how much interest you paid out of that $500,000, can you imagine how much money you actually pulled out just so you can say I have an 800 credit score? Now, I will confess, I'm all about being transparent. I have an 815 credit score. But I already told you I had a time where I had $100,000 in debt. I paid off a few cars here in my lifetime and this and that. I'm getting up there. Right? So it happened. Right? But the question is, do I want to continue to live in debt? No, definitely not. Every store I go to, would you like a credit card? Yeah. We'll give you 10% off. Right? So to buy the $100 object, now you pay $90 for the object, right? But you end up paying $150 for it after you're done paying the interest. Right? So run away from it. So first things first, here's what I need all of y'all to do. If you haven't done so already, what I want you to do is I want you to pull 2 bank statements. And it has to be your last 2. So now we're in the month of March. Right? So what I want you to do is I want you to do January and February. I don't need December, I don't need November, because Yvonne, that was before Christmas time, and I had money then. I don't have no money now. You don't understand? Oh, yeah, I do understand. Right? So you got to pull your last 2 months bank statements. So wherever you got money, I don't care if you got 1 account, 2 accounts, or 5 accounts, which we can talk about. We'll talk about that later, about how to actually have your money spread out, because your money should never be in one bank account, but we're going to leave that for the next session. Right? So wherever you got your money, I want you to pull the bank statements. Now, what do I want you to do? I want you to be able to sort your money out to the penny. Where did it go? I don't care if you ended up spending $3.85 at 7-Eleven and you don't know how to categorize it because you don't really remember what you bought at 7-Eleven. You write 7-Eleven, $3.85. Make sense? So you have to understand where all of it went. No, don't sit there. Look, I've seen so many people put this thing together. And they tell me, well, I paid $1,200 in mortgage. I have a $500 car payment. I got $300 on my cell phone bill. Right? And then when we look at it, the cell phone bill is really $354, $355. Right? Your car payment is not really $500. It was $452. Right? When I am telling you, you want full accountability, I mean you want full accountability of every dime you spend during the last 2 months. And I want to make sure that I say this. This is not for you to feel ashamed of yourself, nor embarrassed. Oh my God, what have I done? That is not the intention of this. It's not for you to sit here and feel shameful and say, oh my God, no wonder I'm in this position. That's not what this is about. This is about recognizing where we are, where our money is going, and how we're going to put this plan together so that way I am no longer a slave to debt. So make sure that when you do this with the right intention. Because I am telling you, if you don't do it with this intention, you will stop halfway through the first month. Because you're going to find out that you're misspending and misplacing money in things that make no sense. So I'll share this story, right? So because I went through this experience and I told you that I love to teach other people how to do this. I had the opportunity of actually helping out a good friend of mine with her financial situation. She says, there is no way we make $10,000 a month. I have about $32,000 in debt, but I don't seem to be able to put a dent in it. I don't understand what's going on, but I got to get out of debt. Yvonne, please help me out because probably I'm not making enough money. So we sat down, did the exact same exercise, guys. Put the last 2 months statements. I want you to sort it all out. I'm going to be at your house. We're going to go ahead and put this little spreadsheet together. I'm going to help you out. I'm going to do with you what I did with myself. So here we go. So I'm sitting there with her, right? So I do all the numbers. And when I do all the numbers, come to find out, she got an extra $5,000 a month that she was making, but she was misspending. So if we do quick math, $5,000, $32,000 in debt. How long will it take her to get out of debt? Not even a year. Now, do you want to know where her money was going? You're curious? You're curious to know where the $5,000 was going? Well, her son needed something. Her mama needed something. Her brother needed something. So every month, they came to her for money. And she never said no. So here's the issue with that. When you're trying to get out of debt, you're gonna become a pro and say, nope. Sorry, I'm broke. If you ever have the opportunity to meet my youngest child, she'll tell you all the time, hey, let's go to dinner. She'll tell you, I'm broke. Are you paying? Right? She'll tell you straight out, right? But here's the thing. That's the mindset you got to carry because you're trying to get out of debt. See, but that child of mine is the one that also is getting ready to graduate college with no debt. Does that make sense? Yes. Now, I will tell you, I don't pay for a lot of her meals too, though. She suckered mama somehow. But it's all good, though, right? So you got to learn how to say no. So now, once you do this, and you find out where your money's going, then we're going to go to the next step, and I think she'll put it up here, right? Oh, Lord, that's everybody's favorite word, that B word. When you think about a budget, please tell me what comes to mind. I really want to hear this. Restraint. What do you say?
Restrictions.
Restrictions. What else?
But I really need that though.
Accountability. Oh my God, that is a scary word when it comes to money.
Responsibility.
Responsibility.
Will I be able to do it?
Will I be able to do it? That doesn't sound like fun.
No.
I can't shop. Oh my God, that's a good one. Mm-hmm. So now here's the trick behind a budget, right? In a budget, here's what you do. You list all of your income. Your wages, child support, annuity, Social Security, unemployment, disability. So now, here's where I'm going to throw an asterisk, right? And now I'm going to speak to my married people for a second. In a household, you can only run one budget. In a household, you can only run one budget. You're married, it should be one budget. Yvonne, you just don't get it. You don't understand who I'm married to. You put $5 in his pocket, it's gone. I'm married to somebody like that. Well, he used to be like that. I will tell you, he learned, he changed his behavior. But back in the day, oh my God, I gave my husband $20. 10 minutes later, I'm like, hey, babe, can I borrow the $20 I just gave you? He said, what $20? I said, babe, the ones that I just gave you. He said, oh, I went to 7-Eleven. Hold on. And he started going through his pockets. You don't have nothing left? Nope. What did you buy? I don't even know. Right? So here's a problem. You do that every day, you're broke. Right? So I taught my husband how not to carry cash because he found out the type of spender he was. See, but I couldn't sit my husband down and say, baby, this is the type of spender that you are, all right? Because that just doesn't fly with my husband. If any of you has had the opportunity to meet him, and if you haven't, you will at some point, guess what? You'll learn about him real quick. Very strong-minded individual, right? So, no, don't sit here and say you don't understand my spouse. You don't understand how they function. No, I do understand how they function because I have a very good one, 15 years ago. And I've been through it, right? But remember, it goes back to what I said before, right? You got to do this together. This is a family thing. This is not a you thing, right? So unless your budget is put together, it's going to take a long, long time to get out of debt. If I had divided the debt between my husband and myself, we would still be in debt because most of it was his. Now, if I tell you the truth, right? So now I'm being transparent with you because I want you to understand where I come from. I was the main breadwinner of the house too. Because you got to understand that during this time period, I went from making this little money, right? Because now I'm on a mission, right? I'm trying to get rid of debt. Then all of a sudden I got a job with Verizon. I said, yes, I made it. I had a 6-figure income. I said, yes, that's right. We're going to do this thing. Imagine if we had kept our budget separately. How can you be okay and your spouse not be okay and you be okay with that?
Come on, man.
Understood?
Yeah.
So I'm going to leave that little asterisk right there. I'm going to let you sit on that because I see this too often where I speak to married people and they say, well, she has her bills, I got mine. I pay 50% of the rent. She pay 50% of the rent. I said, what happened if you get sick? I got to figure it out. What do you mean you got to figure it out? I thought y'all lived here together. Didn't y'all buy the house together? Yes. When y'all did the loan, did they account for your income and her income? Yeah. So why are you separating it now? Wow. So I know biblically it says you can't serve two masters, right? Isn't that what God says? So think about it. In your marriage, if you're separated, you're serving two masters, people. That's all I'm going to say about that. All right, so here we go. Wages, right? when you do that budget, wages, all of it. I don't care what it is. I don't care if you got a little side hustle where you're selling things for cash. Guess what? That is part of your budget. If you're really, really true about this and you really want to get out of debt, you have to make this part of your budget, right? So now, once you do that, then what I want you to do is I want you to list every debt you have. So you owe your sister $200. $200. Oh, I owe my mama $500 too. Hold on. Right? I owe AT&T $30. That's only $30. That go there too. Because next week we're going to talk about how we actually start attacking all that debt. But first thing first, you got to know what it is. You got to see it as a whole, right? You can't sit here and try to pretend like you know because you don't know until you really sit down and analyze it, right? So what you do is I want you to write down the balance owed, any interest rate. So if it's a credit card and you're paying interest on it, it has to be part of this because this has everything to do with the strategy behind it. All right? And then I want you to write down what the minimum payments are, right? Because remember I talked about credit. You're not really trying to mess up your credit while you're doing this, right? Because there might be things you want to do in your future, right? You might be trying to buy a house. Right? You might be trying to buy a new car at some point. So I want to make sure that your credit stay intact while you're going through this. Right? Now, don't get me wrong. There's people who are so far in debt that they can't even do this. And they use different programs and services that are actually available to do like debt renegotiation and things like that. And if that is something that you feel like you got to do, it's okay. Right? Because while you're trying to get out of debt, you ain't trying to buy no daggone house or car anyway. Right? Right now is when we're talking about keeping everything in, preventing it from going out unless he has to. Right? So that's all that's got to be there. So if you go to the next slide, again, I talk about all full transparency, right? What you see on the right where it says Spirit, USAA, Chase, and Home Depot, that was me, people. That was mine. And if you see in those alone, there's some others missing. I just didn't want to give you the whole thing. I told you it was 100,000. IRS had one of them. That alone is $52,000 of debt. The one you see on the left, and it is small on purpose, guys, is because remember the friend I told you I helped out? Yeah. That's hers. You see how many credit cards are there? How many loans are there? You understand? So why do I show you this way? Because it doesn't matter how long or how short your list is. It's okay. You can't get through it. Because you can owe a little amount of money to a lot of people, or you can be like me. You'll be big spender, right? Oh, big money to a few people. It's all good. You know, I still cannot remember what I bought with them credit cards. Ain't that a shame? Because check this out. You know what credit card is? You got to enjoy it 5 years ago, and it's painful for you 6 years later. So you're not even enjoying it while you're paying it. Right? So don't forget that. No matter how little it is, you put it on there. The one thing I never did, thank God, thank you, Jesus, I never borrowed money from family. Thank God.
They're always borrowing it from you.
They do now. Nah. So I'll leave that there for you to kind of think about it. Again, you got to write this down. So I'll let you go to the next slide, and I'm going to show you something. Okay. So now we're going to start talking about this whole thing. Dave Ramsey calls it a zero budget, right? Because now I'm going to take that little fear of the word budget away from you, right? Because here's the thing. One thing that I did do, if you remember, I told you, that with my children, what I did was, instead of having pizza all the time, I went down to twice a month, right? Because I still want to make sure that we had a life in the process, because you got to live, people, right? You can't stop living because you're paying off your debt, right? We're just going to be disciplined about how we go about it, right? So that's what your budget's about. So if you notice that first line on the top, it says monthly take-home pay. What does that mean, Yvonne? Remember I told you that we was making $75,000 a year? That's what Uncle Sam sees, right? This is not what I brought home. So think about it this way. If you're making $120,000 a year, that means you're making $10,000 a month. The reality is you're probably bringing home only $7,300 because the government got the rest, right? So you can't budget on what your salary is. Budget on what you're bringing home, right? But Yvonne, I pay my medical insurance through my company. Great job. What do you bring home? That's what you want to put on here. Because you cannot use money that never makes it to your pocket. Make sense? All right, so then we're going to start from the top. I'm going to work you all the way down. What is the first line that you see there on the left-hand side with the little heart on it? That's right, because the first person you pay is God.
Thank you, Lord God.
And I'm going to talk about this for a minute because I want to make sure everybody understands this. God can do a whole lot more with the 10% than you can. So if you don't trust God with your money, don't sit there and say, I solemnly trust you, Father, because you don't. This is Bible, guys. This is not Yvonne speaking to you. I am talking to you about what the Word says, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
It's all about teaching tonight, right? All I'm doing is teaching you right now. The first person you have to pay is God. You know what the sad part is? That do you realize that God is the second person you're paying all the time? You know why? Because your government had the first percentage. And what's funny is they take 30%. God only asked you for 10. See, when I learned what tithing was all about, and the Word told me to test them, right? You're supposed to give in 10%, the first 10% of your crops, right? And He said, test me on this. I'm going to show you what I can do with this. But you know what? I was probably like some people out there, I can't talk about nobody. Like Pastor Jay always said, I got to talk about myself, right? Thank you, Pastor Jay. I'm going to talk about myself, right? I didn't believe it either. You want real talk? That's real talk. I said, but wait a minute, I'm trying to get out of debt. What you talking about? You want me to give you money? Don't you understand the AT&T Comcast, everybody coming after me? Yeah, I just show you Chase is following me for $17,000. God understands. He understands that I'm in debt. He do understand that I'm in debt. But He also is looking for my obedience in what He said so He can bless me twofold. Right? So the first thing you got to do is you got to plan your giving. You already know how much you make planning. Right? So now let's talk reality, right? Because a lot of people try to hit me with, Yvonne, I can't put 10%. You don't understand. My situation doesn't allow me to do that. That's fine. But you got to commit to something. If it's 2% that you can give right now, give 2%. If it's 15% that you can give right now, give 15%. Whatever it is that you can do, do it. Commit to it and do it. Right? See, it's funny. I'll share a little anecdote with you. I had kids for my previous marriage, right? So you know what happened with divorce, right? And you have children. What comes from it? Child support. Right? And for some reason, sometimes people believe that child support is for me to give myself a good life, not my child, right? My ex-husband ain't no exception. Right? So check this out. He lost his job. And he came to me and said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I said, you better figure it out. But I can't pay you $1,500 a month. I don't need $1,500 a month. That money ain't for me. It's for your kids. So what am I going to do? I don't know. I don't care if you give them $50 a month, but dang it, you're going to commit to something and you're going to give it to your kids whether you like it or not. Right? So check this out. I had that mentality as it related to him, but I didn't have that mentality with myself as it related to tithing. Ain't that something? Right? So commit to something. Right? The word tells you 10%. right? Now, don't be lying because God knows your heart. Don't think you're playing somebody because you ain't playing nobody. You're playing yourself, right? We got to be obedient. Make sure that that's the first line you fill. All right? So now, when you fill this out, you see there's 2 boxes. And I'm going to make sure that everybody has access to this. A little PDF. I'll try to get it out to everybody. On the right-hand side, it says spend. On the left-hand side, it said planned. Right? Because right now, what we're trying to find out is where we are. I want to make sure you put it on the spent bucket. And now, if you haven't been given, I want you to put it on the planned bucket. Now, if you haven't been given enough, I want you to put spent and planned. Because we're going to trust him, and we're going to trust him wholeheartedly. I'm telling you, we're going to get you out of debt. I'm a living testimony of it, right? So then, the next thing we got to think about is what we call the 4 walls, right? That means your bare necessities, right? You got to eat. You got to pay your utilities. You got to pay for your shelter, whether it's a rent or your mortgage, regardless, right? And you got to have transportation, because in order for you to make money, chances are, you got to drive to work, right? So that means those are your 4 bare necessities that have to be accounted for no matter what, right? Buying a new Gucci bag is not a necessity. Though it look good, and I make it look good, right? But here, what you're going to do is, we're going to take out the necessity. So that's why I said we're going to work it from the top and we're going to work it down, right? So we address giving, right? So now let's talk about food, because you got to eat. And I'm going to upset some people here too. These are some of the areas that is funny when I talk to people about this. They're like, Yvonne, you just don't get it. I said, oh, no, I do. I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt, washed it, put it back on, threw it back out, and put it back on again. So what you're going to do on your spend category on groceries, see, if you notice, I put 2, right? It says groceries and restaurants. Because I don't know about you, but I like to go out to eat. I like when they come over, hi, ma'am, what would you like tonight? I love that feeling, right? I love to serve, but I love being served too, right? So guess what? What I want you to do, on the spend column, I don't want you to touch the plan yet, all right? On your spend column, I want you to write out how much did you spend in groceries, right? Now, and how much did you spend in restaurants? Now, Yvonne, you got me all confused because you said you wanted me to pull 2 bank statements. What happened if January I spent $200 at the restaurant, and then in February, because, it was Valentine's Day, I spent $500? What do I write in? What I want you to do is I want you to add the 2 numbers up, divide them in 2, and that's your average. Because chances are, if you go back to December, November, October, whatever, your average is going to come out. All right? And that's what your spend is. Right? Because when we talk about your plan section on groceries, that's where people really start getting all confused with me. Because even in your grocery spending, you got to gain discipline. I've known people who spend about $600 a week in I don't know how you spend $600 a week in groceries. But check this out, though. When you check the little card out, there's steak, lobster, shrimp, scallops, and 1 bag of chicken. Right? And then you got Oreo cookies, and you got sodas, and you got juices, right? You got all this extra stuff inside that little cart. So by the time you check out, it's $500. Y'all haven't been to Walmart? And you're going to go buy a little thing of batteries, and you walk out, and the lady say $200. And you're like, I came for batteries. Ain't that so? You know that 80% of the time I will walk away, and guess what? I didn't even bring the batteries I went to go buy, but we're not going to talk about that. All right, so again, go to the spend column and you put it in, right? So now go to the next page. I want you to leave the savings part alone for a second, right? Remember we said there's 4 walls, right? So now let's talk about transportation and housing. Break it down. Again, how much did you spend? Your rent should be pretty much standard in your mortgage. You should be paying the same thing every single month. So you put that in there. How much do you pay for water? Guys, if you don't pay for your water bill because you're not charged for it, just put 0. It's okay. All right. Natural gas, if you pay gas, electricity, cable, internet. I typically put my cell phone here because nowadays I think that cell phones have become a necessity. A lot of us don't have phones at home. That is how we communicate. Sometimes that's how some of us work. So please make sure that you can put that in this bucket because it has become a need, just like internet has. All right? And then on your transportation side, how much do you spend in gas and how much do you spend in the maintenance of it, right? So if you had an oil change, right, you had to buy new tires, that's where that falls. That's where that goes. All right? Then on the top left-hand side where it says savings, you see how it says emergency fund? Yeah. So that's exactly where we're going to start having the first step of accountability. How much do you really have? If you have the full $1,000, put that you got the $1,000 and put it on the spend bucket. All right? You can't save money if you owe money.
There you go. That's true.
Yeah.
Help me, Lord.
Right? Because you still owe money. Again, there's going to be different rules we're going to walk through here because I want you to think that it's also black and white either. Right? So, emergency fund, how much do you have? Then, of course, you got to sit there and highlight what your personal expenses have been, right? So what's your clothing? If you notice the cell phone is here on that side, I moved it over, but that's a personal choice. What's the next line? You see what it says right there? Fun money. Wait a minute, Yvonne, I get to have fun money on my budget? Yes, you do. What? And then we'll put hair and cosmetics, right? Because we got to look good. Right? Right, Pastor K? Got to, right? So make sure that you put what you spent on all those categories, right? So then if you go to the next slide, what you'll see is now it starts talking about lifestyle, right? Childcare. So if you have children and you pay for childcare, that has to be part of your budget, right? If you have a pet, I got one. I got a little furry one, right? She costs me money, a lot of it too. Entertainment, vacation, and education. Now here for education, what I want you to put on there is if you're actively going to school and you're actively paying to go to school now. This is not a bucket for student loans, right? So this is for any education that you're doing right now. So whether it is that you're going through college classes right now or you're doing a training module somewhere and you're spending money on it, that's what goes there. Because if you can see on the next side where it says debt, that's where your student loans go. Right? I don't know about you, but if I had given this to my friend, she would not have been able to fill all her debt on there. So please feel free to use a separate piece of paper to put all the debt that you have. Because remember, we said we're going to highlight every single bit. I want you to fully see all of it. All right? And again, what bucket are you putting it in? What line are you filling in? The spend, right? When are we going to do the plan one? Next week. Got to do it. Because at the end of it, what we're going to do is this. Once we put all this thing together, we are going to create what's called a zero budget. So that means that whatever you bring in during the month, you will know where every dime is going at the end of the month. The reason why we have to go through a bank statement is because we don't know where our money is going. We might have an idea. Do you know exactly how much you pay for groceries a month? Do you know? To the T? Most people don't know. Right? But if I ask you how much your mortgage is, I bet you everybody can spit that out. Right? Again, so those are the bigger things that we focus on, right? And we forget about all the little things, but what will surprise you sometimes is that all these little things end up adding up more than what your actual essentials are. And that's what we're going to tackle. All right? Because, yes, sir.
So, Yvonne, if you can also share, I'm not sure whether it's going to be tonight or next session, and that is, how often, once you establish that budget, how often should you go back and revisit that budget? Just to make sure that you are on point, or maybe things have changed along the way? How often should you do that?
And we will address that on the next one. And I'm going to tell you why I want to address that on the next one and not tonight. Because right now, what I want you to do is focus on looking at what the picture is. Right? Without telling y'all how old I am. Y'all remember when you used to take Polaroid pictures? Y'all remember how y'all used to shake it off? So you can see what it looked like. This is your Polaroid, people. This is it right now. This is you. You're going to be able to see what you actually look like financially, right? And understand this, that personal finances is actually 80% behavior. It's only 20% knowledge. So please don't get hooked up or hung up on, well, I just didn't know. I just don't know anything about money. I don't know how to invest money. It ain't about that knowledge. It's not. It's about the habits we're going to form, right? I learned a long time ago when I was in the military, they say it takes 21 days of repeatedly doing the exact same thing in order for it to become a habit. Guess what? What happens if you mess up? You start back up at one, y'all. The minute's over. You can be on day 20 and you mess up. How many of y'all ever been on a diet? Come on, let's go there. And you're like, all right, for this month, I'm not going to eat out 30 days straight. Right? And like the first week, you're like, oh, going home. You tell everybody, I can't go out. Why? I'm not going out this month. Right? We're doing a financial fasting this month. So that's why we ain't going out anyway. Right? But then what happened is like on day 19, somebody invites you to give in. You're like, I've been really good. I'm going to reward myself. And then you out, and like you're back at day one. All of a sudden, you're eating out again 3-4 times a week. And you're like, what happened? Right? So it's all about behavior. It's all about establishing habits. That's really what it's going to break down to. Yes, ma'am.
But I can attest to on December the 2nd, because man, we ate out a lot in my house, a lot. And on December the 2nd, we decided, I think getting the word from the Lord, that was it. We weren't going to do it. So from December the 2nd until now, with my kids, I made them eat everything in the house.
Mm-hmm.
We had an abundance of food, but we never ate at home.
Mm-hmm.
It was ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
So today, it
Yes,
is
ma'am.
what, March?
Yes, ma'am. It's March the 8th.
We actually went grocery shopping. That's how much food we accumulated in abundance that
Wow.
we did not eat.
Wow.
So the cabinets were bare finally,
Mm-hmm.
but I will tell you that the kids had a hard time with the no. I had a hard time with the no.
Mm-hmm.
Because we still had fun, and we didn't make it like, we still had fun,
Mm-hmm.
but not just that, because we ate a lot of fast food.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we did. We ate a lot of fast food. I love French fries.
Mm-hmm.
But since December the 2nd, I have not had them.
Okay.
My kids went to McDonald's the other night.
Mm-hmm.
I did not eat those fries.
Good.
Did not have the desire, did not want it, because I really want to be disciplined
Mm-hmm.
in this area, because I believe that things trickle down.
Yes, ma'am.
You can work on a certain area, it will trickle down.
Yes, ma'am.
And I was telling Deaconess Yvonne earlier that the one thing that I noticed is that we as a people will set a goal,
Yes.
but we will not keep the system in which we had the goal.
Once
I
you
did
hit it.
Financial Peace University when I got my house. The goal was always to get the house.
Mm-hmm.
The goal was never to keep the habit in which I had to keep the house.
Yep.
So I ended up back in debt, but I got the house.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm realizing the system
Mm-hmm.
has
The
to
system.
still be in place
Yes, ma'am.
for you to be free.
Yes, ma'am.
You can consistently set other goals,
Mhm.
but with no system, it is only the goal.
Right.
And I said to her, I used to run. I classified myself as a runner.
Mm-hmm.
The day that I reclassified myself is I want to run a marathon and did it is the day I stopped running.
Yeah.
Because I didn't say I was a runner.
Yep.
It's what you say to yourself.
Yes, ma'am.
I am debt free.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm not just paying bills.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm learning that because I took this class before. I've done all of this before.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm learning now through the books that I'm reading.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll show you guys, I'm reading a really good book called Atomic Habits.
Mm-hmm.
This book is the
Yep.
bomb.
Tiny changes.
It is the bomb.
Yes, ma'am.
And it talks about not
Yeah.
having a foolproof system.
Yes, ma'am.
Go all day, have 10 goals.
Yep.
But if you don't have a system, you're
It's
going
not
to
gonna
be right
work.
back where you started from.
Yes, ma'am. That is true. And that's what this is all about. Again, establishing habits, changing behavior, right? There is growth in pain. So it's going to be painful. So be ready for it to be painful. But I promise you, it will be worth the struggle. Because once you're at the finish line and you can do whatever you want to do and you can go to sleep at night without worrying about how much debt you got, trust me, it will change your life. It did for us. All right? So, homework. Finish this out. Fill everything up. On the spend section, should be completely filled out by the time that we meet again next week. All right? Next week, if we go to the next slide, I will show you what the right percentages are. Because, right, you're about to find out what you're doing, but we're going to see what we're going to do. All right? So now if you take me to the last slide, I'll show you this that says something like this. Because this is what I'm going to wrap up with. Take it to the last one. The little things. When you know the impact of little expenses, you'll realize that there's nothing little in the world. So with that, I leave you. You guys have a good night. I can't wait till next Tuesday. Now, for anyone who would like a copy of tonight's information, please text us your email address to 443-347-6658. Can't wait to see y'all back here next week for Tuesday night teaching. Y'all have a blessed night.
This was so good. I guess I gotta turn off my ET.